Yeah, there we go. So, welcome everyone. It's so fantastic to have you with us today. My name is Ewa. I'm an economic integration manager at Migration Yorkshire. And I had the privilege of being the project lead for Migrant Women in Business project. And for those of you who don't know Migration Yorkshire, we are a partnership of councils working across the whole of Yorkshire and Humber. And we support people and organizations to achieve the most positive outcomes of migration for everyone in the region. And it's just very important to acknowledge all the people, all the partners, all the supporters, thanks to whom we were able to launch this project, to fulfill it. So just wanted to start with saying a big thank you to all the amazing aspiring women entrepreneurs who took part in this project. You're the reason we are here. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. So a big thank you. Obviously, to all the partners on the project, to the policy and practice workers who offered their insights through interviews and meetings. We held a project's closing event back in July 2024. So just wanted to say thank you to the keynote speakers and generally to all the contributors who added their valuable insights to this project's report. And obviously to West Yorkshire Combined Authority, who funded this project. Without this funding, we wouldn't be here again. And to Leeds University Business School, who funded the final report development. And I just want to take a moment to say a big thank you to you, Deema. It's been just fantastic working with you, and you've been a great lead on the development of the report. So thank you so much. And passing to you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you, Ewa. Okay, so a quick look at the agenda. We have a number of valuable speakers with us and contributors who contributed to both the project and the report. We have with us today Fatima Khan-Shah, the West Yorkshire's first ever Inclusivity Champion. We also have Anna Mikhail-Kishina, one of our program graduates who will talk to us about her journey. We have Joe Wilkinson, Program Lead, Business Support Ecosystem from WICA. John Brunton, Growth Hub Manager, Hull and East Yorkshire Business Growth and Skills Hub. We have Professor Mondir Ram, OBE, the Director of CREM Centre at Aston University. That's the Centre for Research in Ethnic Minority Entrepreneurship. Dr. Lorna Treener is also with us, Associate Professor in Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the University of Nottingham and President of the Institute for Small Business and Entrepreneurship, ISB. We have Fred Kastner, the co-founder of the Entrepreneurial Refugee Network, and Isabel Ford, who is the founder of Skylight Venture. And Andrew Mycock will also be joining us in a bit. He is the Chief Policy Fellow for the Yorkshire and Humber Policy Engagement and Research Network, YPERN, at the University of Leeds. Okay, so next, please, Ewa. Okay, so now we will be sharing some insights and key recommendations, and Ewa will start with the project insights.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. And just to reiterate what Deema has been saying, that today is just very much about sharing just a few highlights from the report. If anyone is interested in learning a little bit more about the program design, about the practicalities, do get in touch. We can schedule a call and go and dive a little bit more into more details. I think actually I said on a call, Craig Allen from North East Lincolnshire Council, we already have a scheduled call for next week to take a little bit more in detail about the project. So do get in touch. But yeah, for now, I just wanted to talk about, what sparked the creation of Migrant Women in Business Pilot and look at the insights and rationales. So the project builds on several insights that recognize the socio-economic value of migrant and ethnic minority businesses in the UK economy. Some of our insights came directly from conversations with migrant communities who told us about the barriers that they were facing when trying to access mainstream business support. But we also drew from the knowledge and experience of few experts in the economy and entrepreneurship fields who became this report's contributors. We're excited to have some of them with us today, namely Professor Monder Ram and Dr. Lorna Triner, and we look forward to hearing their reflections later on the call. Peter Glover was unable to join us today, but he also contributed to this part of the report. So the main 4 insights from the project: the need to raise West Yorkshire's living standards. Peter Glover, who's the Economic Evidence Manager at West Yorkshire Combined Authority, explains that one of the key things that holds back West Yorkshire's economy is the small size of its business base. The ratio of startups to population in West Yorkshire is below national average, and there is need for promoting West Yorkshire's economy through business startup activities. Aspiring entrepreneurs from ethnic minority communities struggle to access mainstream business support. And despite their potential for high socioeconomic contributions, there is lack of reliable data on ethnic minority businesses. As Professor Monder Ram points out, there is a pressing need for tailored, culturally sensitive enterprise support that recognizes the unique challenges and opportunities facing migrant business owners. Something that all of the combined authorities in Yorkshire and Humber agreed on was the lack of reliable data that would lead to creation of such tailored support. One of our program's aims was to start building a bridge between the mainstream business support providers and migrant communities. And I think we've laid strong foundations with the team at WECA, as well as started developing positive links with other combined authorities. And last but not least, only 1 in 3 entrepreneurs in the UK is female. As Dr. Lorna Triner shares, stereotypes, assumptions about, and expectations of women and their roles create barriers to women's enterprise and business growth. When we add the intersectionality lens, migrant women face much more complex barriers when trying to access support. We were glad to be able to offer a flexible and tailored program, and so all 25 of our amazing women participants graduate. I'll pass on to you, Deema.
Okay, thank you, Eva. And yeah, I just put the link for our report in the chat box if anyone would like to download the report. We will be going through major headings, but won't be going through the report in detail. Some of the reflections we had on the challenges facing migrant women entrepreneurs. The way we approach this is looking at it at 4 levels: at the level of the migrant women, West Yorkshire, Yorkshire and Humber, and then at a national level. At the level of migrant women, we came across the challenges that are, I can say, well acknowledged in research. Childcare challenges were pervasive, emotional challenges, funding challenges, issues related to being a social outcast or discrimination issues were also evident. But we also looked at it from the level of West Yorkshire, where we interviewed and spoke to a number of representatives from Migration Yorkshire, from West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and also to practitioners who lead on a number of business startup initiatives in the region. And in that regard, we did come across certain challenges related to funding opportunities being very much focused on businesses, running businesses or businesses already making tax contributions rather than focusing at the very early startup support. There was a lack of understanding around the general differences between the different stages of business startup. So businesses at the very early stages of business startup will require different kind of support as those in more advanced stages. Businesses run by migrants or by women or by communities from underrepresented communities or marginalized communities will require a different kind of support than others running the orthodox businesses. There was a lack of understanding about those variations. There were financial constraints around obtaining the funding or obtaining long-term funding and how that can become sustainable on the long run. So the pockets of small funding run for a short duration of time and there is lack of continuity. There were issues also around success perceptions being very much focused around economic outcomes and profits, which are really important, but particularly looking at when we look at the vulnerable groups or the underrepresented groups, there might be different success factors that need to be considered. The support appeared to be a little bit fragmented as well. There were lots of great initiatives going on, but the referral systems did not work in a homogenized way, and there needs to be better links in that regard. We also looked at it from the level of Yorkshire and Humber, where we hosted a thought-provoking panel back in July at the University of Leeds when we held the closing event for our project. We had representatives from York and North Yorkshire, from South Yorkshire, from East Yorkshire and Hull, and from West Yorkshire. And we arrived at an understanding that the challenges across Yorkshire and Humber are largely the same, but there are different socio-demographic issues to be considered across the region, just different geographies, different factors that will intersect with the experiences of individuals in different ways across the region, and these need to be understood in a different way. For example, migrant women in urban as opposed to rural areas, migrant women living in condensed urban places in North Yorkshire, migrant women living in highly diverse areas as opposed to non-diverse areas. All of these factors will affect the kind of experiences that business starters will experience in their journeys. Across Yorkshire and Humber, there was also a strong commitment to adopt a bottom-up approach to involve the voices of underrepresented groups, but that's still in its infancy, but there is a strong commitment towards that. The initiative taken by WICA through the recently funded projects for marginalized groups, of which this project is part, were described as inspiring, and there were calls to replicate this experience across Yorkshire and Humber. And the thing, of course, in relation to the availability of a database, which Eva spoke about, there appears to be there isn't a strong database to base the long-term sustainable solutions on, and that needs to be made clearer and more accessible. At a wider national level, we were lucky to have TERN and Skylight as partners on this project, and we will later on have a quick chat with Fred Kastner from TERN. TERN has had a massive experience supporting refugee entrepreneurs regionally and nationally, and they will reflect on those experiences and lessons to learn. Eva, can we go to the next slide? Okay, in terms of recommendations, I will go through these very quickly, and then we can move to our speakers to raise some questions. The recommendations in the report, again, explained in more detail in the report, but we did speak about recommending harnessing a bottom-up approach in supporting business development, the voices of underrepresented and marginalized groups being embedded in business plans, whether that be through advisory groups or through committees or through panels. There needs to be also targeted business startup support for marginalized and underrepresented groups, understanding the different needs of different groups. That will require a stronger database, but it will enable a better distribution of resources, because currently we did notice some resources being wasted through a one-size-fits-all approach where everybody is enrolled on the same program, but not everybody needs the same kind of support. So something like a staged approach where the resources can be distributed and business starters can be enrolled depending on the kind of need that they will require and the stage that they are at. Enabling success measure and assessment criteria for long-term sustainable support. Again, This is not to undermine the importance of economic growth. Of course, that is important. But when talking about vulnerable groups, in particular at the very early stages of business startup support, perhaps we need to be a bit more flexible in terms of understanding success beyond the economic measures and looking at the economic outputs as a longer term achievement through the support systems. Developing streamlined referral systems. As I said, we did come across wonderful initiatives, lots of support being offered, but a more streamlined referral system to reduce the fragmentation across those supportive systems might be helpful. And last but not least, promoting the role of universities in targeting impact through engaged scholarship. This is something that Andrew Mycock will talk about more towards the end. Andrew from YPERN. And this is where we see universities as being anchor points placed and embedded within their regions, harnessing the collaborations and networks within that region in order to achieve regional growth. And as I said, Andrew will talk about that a little bit more. Okay, so moving on to our speakers, that was a very quick background about the report. And for our speakers, I would like first to welcome Fatima Khan-Shah, West Yorkshire's first ever Inclusivity Champion. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Fatima. And I would like to offer you this platform for a quick reflection about the importance of targeting business support at migrants and other underrepresented groups, and where does West Yorkshire stand in that regard? So on to you.
So firstly, Assalamu alaikum, Deema. It's lovely to see you, and good afternoon, everybody. It's so wonderful and exciting to be at this event. Honestly, I wish it was in person so you could see how giddy and excited I am. The reason why this is really important to me is because it's not lost on me that just by chance, I happen to be born in a country where the access we have to education, skills and resources is a right rather than a privilege. It could very easily be possible for me with my heritage to be born in a country where I have to fight to go to school. I have to fight for the opportunity to run my own business, or to have the opportunity to access the skills that we've got in West Yorkshire. And as the granddaughter of a mill worker from this region who now works in the corridors of power next door to the West Yorkshire Mayor, it's not lost on me that social mobility is very alive and possible in West Yorkshire. So what have I got to say, and what do I think you need to remember? Well, the first thing is West Yorkshire is a region of opportunity. It does not matter where you come from, what your route is to this place. Opportunities are available here, and we are committed to supporting you to fulfill your potential. And this is an incredible example of the art of the possible. I think the second thing is a reaffirmation of our commitment to everybody, that the West Yorkshire Mayor is really committed to ensuring that we have the infrastructure we need to support people to fulfil their potential. So things like having better homes, being better connected, but more importantly, opportunities for prosperity and supporting people, migrant women, to develop their own businesses, to become entrepreneurs, to fulfill their potential is a key element of that. I mean, one of the things that I was really struck by when I read the report was the power of coaching and mentoring, and how much that really resonated with me. I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't have the coaching and mentoring support that I got, the connection to opportunities, people developing my capability, but also practical interventions like access to childcare is so important. And I think what this report demonstrates is that we need a two-way intervention, and that is from the bottom up as well as from the top down. And one of the key things that I think Ewa and Deema have really advocated, and we are so blessed to have you both in our region, is the importance of advocacy and evidence-based interventions. And this report really demonstrates the power of both those things. So you told me, Deema, to keep it short. I hope that was all right. But I want to congratulate you all on the success of this report, because I think it is a success that you got it to where it is now, but also an ongoing commitment from myself and the incredible Jo, who will be speaking very shortly. I don't want to steal her thunder, about our ongoing commitment to this. And I hope to see you soon and to see what happens on this journey. And I hope that you will keep me in the car with you as you travel down this road.
We certainly will. Thank you, Fatima. Ewa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for your support, Fatima. It's so good to have you in our court, yeah, in our corner. And really appreciate you keeping it to the 5 minutes. Thank you. I have a great pleasure to introduce the next speaker, who's one of our graduates. Anna, I did practice pronouncing your name, so let me give it a go. Anna Mikhalchishina, who's the founder of Ukraine. And we just wanted to invite Anna to speak about her experience on the program and why she thought this kind of support is important. And obviously, Anna is just one of our graduates. There's 25 amazing women who graduated from the program. And one of my colleagues later, we will share a link. We produced a short video with 4 case studies, so you can actually hear directly from a few other graduates who were talking about their journey. So we'll make sure to circulate that. But Anna, I will pass on to you now, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eva. Just wanted to check, do you hear me? Does my microphone work?
All works, Anna.
Yes, so my name is Anna, and I'm from Ukraine. And and I arrived here in the UK in the spring of 2022 after Russia invaded our country. With the help of Migrant Women in Business, I started a social initiative aimed at providing free English language training to Ukrainian children. The idea itself came to my mind after about a year after my arrival in the UK, after I more or less settled, found my job and rented my own house here. With my previous experience in education, I knew that quality foreign language training was accessible for people in bigger cities only in my country and could cost them a fortune. Today, when millions of people have had to leave their homes, paying for additional tutors was beyond their reach. Schools are short of teachers and lessons are interrupted by air raids every day, so school education is now on a very low level. I was really obsessed with that idea, and we all know, and I know from my own experience in the UK, that the knowledge of English is essential in the modern world. So I decided to start face-to-face and online groups to support children, giving them the opportunity to learn English for free. So the idea seemed great, but I had no idea where to start and what should be my further steps. And at some point, I came across information about the Migrant Women in Business project on the internet. And it was for women, for refugees, and for those who have business ideas. And all three, these 3 bullet points worked for me. And although I really lacked self-confidence, I decided to try. And the project gave me all I needed: information, training, and support. It was so inspiring and engaging and full of positivity. Jane, thank you so much. You gave answers to all my questions, provided live examples, and even connected me with people. It was very well organized in terms of time and location and the way training was delivered. I have also met some great people, Migrant Women in Business team, and as well as my group mates. We learned from one another and became friends with some of them after the course. So today I've got a registered CIC, and my first group was launched in October. And in recent months, we have raised money through donations for the second group, which is starting in March. It could sound very small, like only 2 groups, but I can't help thousands, I understand that. But at this point, the thing we do means a lot to those who currently work with us. And I would never be where I am now without the Migrant Women Business Project. So I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you very much, Anna. And it's great that you share these insights, which are very inspiring for other graduates and other women sharing your journey as well. Okay, and next I would like to welcome Joe Wilkinson. Joe is the Program Lead Business Support Ecosystem at WICA. Thank you for joining us, Joe. And my question to you, if I may, is about envisaging the future role of WICA in supporting business startup support for marginalized groups. How do you see that developing? And can you see any future insights building on the recently funded projects of which this project is part?
Thanks, Deema. Just before we start, I did put a note in the chat for either of you. John Brunton's struggling to get into the event, and I know he's speaking. Have you done it?
Yes, I've just emailed. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
just trying to
that's
get
great.
to John on board. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, so in answer to the question posed, so I think for us, if you look at our recently published local growth plan, it clearly outlines that we do need to look at how we break down barriers that prevent startup activity, and particularly around how we do that, which is that co-design and looking at the different interventions and support we need. And I think this report, really speaks to that in a lot of detail. I think we need to ensure that there is accessible business support offer that harnesses and bolsters existing startup support for everybody to access. And we know that not just from this report, from lots of other reports and with minority ethnic groups that we've spoken to, that the business support ecosystem is really fragmented and really confusing, and it's difficult to know where to go or where to start. So I think as a combined authority, it's one of our roles is that of a convener and a facilitator. And we are looking at better providing a level of universal provision for all businesses in West Yorkshire. So that's regardless of its size, sector, business stage. And we need to do that through a business-facing website, online tools, and a better supported ecosystem to navigate through. So to provide that, at the moment, we are currently going through a co-design process for a new business-facing website, which its main aim is to simplify the business support ecosystem. And it's about ensuring that all resources are clear and reachable for everybody, including those marginalised groups, and being able to provide a place where people can easily find the help they need when they need it. And I know that was a key thing that did come out of the report, particularly around that mainstream business support is, we don't even know what exists, never mind then what to do when we find it and how to access it. I think also in answer to some of the recommendations out of the report for any future commissioning, I think we really need to look at some of those outcomes that came from the report and look at maybe how we can implement different success measures. So those success measures that really accommodate that social and community and psychological outcomes rather than just focusing solely on that economic success, which at the moment a lot of our funding does focus on. Our commercial team as well, who run all our procurements, are working really hard to ensure that we open up those procurement opportunities to smaller suppliers, and particularly focusing on underrepresented communities. And I think that's areas where organisations like Migration Yorkshire and other smaller community-based organisations that you might be working with can come together and could really benefit from and have impact with. As well as that, we're currently going through a business support review, and as part of that, we are looking at how we can support providers of business support better meet the needs of different marginalised communities, such as migrants and refugees, but also neurodiverse individuals. And so things like we're currently exploring whether we might be able to embed the Ethnic Minority Business Support National Standards Framework to deliver sustainable and inclusive business advice and support services across the ecosystem. So I think for us it's about looking at what's already out there and actually how can we maybe add value or bolster what's already been provided to provide more or to be able to work better within those communities. Over the next few months, we will be starting to really look at what startup provision could look like across West Yorkshire, and we're really keen to engage with local, regional and national stakeholders, amongst community players, policy, academia, so we can really look at fostering inclusive development and really leverage those diverse perspectives, and like I said, you know, co-design something that really is fit for purpose. So things like this and the other programs that we ran through the development fund, which was looking at different barriers to accessing startup support, is going to be really important in this piece of work. Another thing we're looking at doing, we're doing a lot of work around access to finance, and I know that comes up quite a lot, particularly for startups. So we're exploring the idea, similar to the development fund that this programme was funded through, a development fund which specifically will address challenges faced by founders, and particularly for those underserved. So, for example, female and marginalised communities. So we're looking at that, and I think the insights from this programme and the others are really going to be important into feeding into all our future planning and development for startup provision. So whilst I can't give any hard kind of timelines to any of this, we are starting these conversations. We do have the reports from the programmes that will run through the development fund, the startup provision, and we are looking at putting together a roundtable discussion with Migration Yorkshire, with Deema, with other players around the table to start this process off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jo. That's really very good to hear, particularly the last bit about the potentially closely upcoming or shortly upcoming developmental funds. So we will keep an open eye, definitely, Eva and I. Okay. I'm not sure, did John manage to?
I can see John now join. Sorry, I was a little bit distracted, but I think, John, can you hear us? Oh, I think he lost John, is it? Oh, yes.
Brilliant.
Yes, amazing.
Yes, apologies for the technical issues. I'm joining through my phone, so the sound and audio quality might not be as good as my laptop, but at least I'm here.
You're perfect, actually. We can hear you fine. So thank you so much. And just wanted to make an official introduction, John Brunton, who's leading the Growth Hub business at Hull and East Yorkshire, and who is also the contributor of our report. So thank you so much for joining, for your persistence to find the technology today and arriving. And a question to you, John. In relation to business startup support for migrants in general, but also migrant women in particular, how do you see the situation in Hull and East Yorkshire in comparison to West Yorkshire and the wider Yorkshire region, and what might be your future projection?
Thank you, Eva. So I think, first of all, just wanted to say, how informative and inspirational I've certainly found the Migrant Women in Enterprise project. Obviously, when I was invited to the celebration event in Leeds last July, it was certainly something that was new to me. We haven't run similar programs in this region, so I think it's fair to say we are currently on a learning and discovery journey, and we're learning from other regions how they've approached this and adopted this. So I think just to set the scene, so obviously the Hull and East Yorkshire Growth Hub, I think everyone will know, part of a national network of growth hubs. And our priority, is to provide that streamlined access to business support, but also pre-start support for anyone in our region. And we do that really working in partnership with our 2 local authorities. So we do receive referrals and inquiries from a wide range of people from various backgrounds in our communities. And that is relating to people who own businesses and also those that are looking to set them up. So I think just to answer your question, in terms of the situation in Hull and East Yorkshire, first of all, we know that our migrant communities are not quite as large as those in West Yorkshire. However, the city of Hull, we have a growing migrant community. So, for example, we've had for about the last 15 to 20 years a growing Eastern European community, for example. And increasingly, we're having a lot more refugees and asylum seekers with settled status in the city of Hull from Middle East countries and African countries as well. So we know that's going to be a growing proportion of our community in the years to come. I think in terms of defined and specialist support programs for migrants and migrant entrepreneurs, particularly for migrant women, I've said this before, and I hate to be that person that says this, but often we don't always have the resources to commission and to lead on programs that have got defined audiences. And often, you know, we deliver business as normal activities because that's what we're resourced to do. However, what I think we've done over the last sort of 6 to 9 months is look at things that we can do that are quite easy to achieve, that don't necessarily have a big cost attributed to them. So, for example, is making more proactive relationships and partnerships with key local stakeholder and community groups. So, for example, raising awareness, raising the profile of the growth of service to organisations, third sector organisations that work with migrant communities so that they're aware that the service is there. I think there's also that aversion in some communities to go into the local council, for example, for business support. So again, it's trying to cut through that particular barrier and making sure that our referral barrier pathways are very much there. And then it's also looking at, excuse me, working on new initiatives and programmes that, again, there may not be a huge initial cost. So it's around our powers of facilitation, our powers of convening, working with partners and other groups. So one thing that we've started to do in the last month, we're developing a women in manufacturing group, because we know women in manufacturing are underrepresented, particularly in senior roles. And that is something that we've launched, and we are hoping for that group to build and become sustainable. And ultimately, the women themselves will take that group forwards, and it'll be an informal networking group to share best practice, to share advice, to share challenges in common. So it's that peer learning element. I think in terms of our future projections, as I said earlier, we know the migrant community in Hull and East Yorkshire will continue to grow relative to the regional population. So one thing that we have started to do at our wider organisation, Hull and East Yorkshire Business Growth and Skills Hub, is to develop our EDI action plan. So this might sound like an obvious thing to say, but this is to ensure that our services and our engagement reflects the full diversity of our regional community, and that all of our services are inclusive. And we're going through a transitional period. So as many people will know, on the 1st of May, we will elect a Hull and East Yorkshire Mayor. So the Hull and East Yorkshire Combined Authority will be set up from May onwards. So this EDI action plan is something that we're hoping for the Mayor and the Combined Authority to adopt. We can integrate that through all the business support and skills support services that we run. But the key here is demonstrating the need for targeted support, and therefore hopefully applying for and drawing down devolved funding for this purpose. Because at the moment, we're the poor relation in Yorkshire, we're the only part of Yorkshire without devolution. So hopefully I'll speak to you all in 6 months' time, and we have got access to additional resources. And the key thing for me is that we've learned from the approach of others, and the report that's being launched today, we'll certainly use that as a key resource to inform our design. And I think there's two recommendations in particular that I think were really excellent. I think one is about harnessing the bottom-up business support development approaches. So making sure that we work with underrepresented groups in the development of services from the ground level. That's really, really key and important. That's something we will do. Pardon me. And secondly, the recommendation about setting appropriate success measures and assessment criteria, I think that's really key as well. So like I said, I think over the last 9 months, I've really learned a lot through the West Yorkshire programme. It's been very inspirational, and it's certainly something we'll use to inform our own design and development. So hopefully I'll talk to you all in 6 months' time, and we're starting to put in place a more targeted support programme for migrants and migrant women in particular.
Oh, fantastic, John. Thank you so much. And I know, because we've been having regular conversations and catch-ups, and I know we've been looking at, as you said, appreciating that resources might not be quite there yet, but what could we do, even if it's a small intervention, or have a look at some sort of idea to maybe test something, or start looking at kind of how could we find out a little bit more from the data perspective. And as you said, there will be obviously a slightly different, you know, group and in terms of kind of people living and migrant communities. So thank you for being such a great supporter of the work, and thank you again for managing to join us today despite the technical difficulties. Deema, I'll pass on to you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, John. It's great to have you and to listen to your insights. Next, I'll call Professor Monder Ram. Monder, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello, Monder.
Hiya,
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So it's great to have you today, Monder. Monder Ram OBE is the director of the Centre for Research in Ethnic Minority Entrepreneurship, CREM, at Aston University. Monder, you're someone who have worked with migrant entrepreneurs for 25 years or more now. You've been part of the development in research, and you've witnessed the growth in the development in migrant entrepreneurship research and the calls to engage more and support those migrants in their business startup endeavors. And you've now heard from policy representatives. So I would like to ask you that based on your insights and what you've heard, based on your wide experience, where do you see the main gaps hindering the growth and development of migrant businesses, despite all the growth that we've seen in research and policy? And what would be the main points of action that you would recommend?
Thank you, Deema. Well, let me sort of start off by congratulating you and your colleagues on an excellent report and an excellent initiative. Not only have you brought expert research to bear upon the issue, you've convened, equally importantly, a huge number of very important and influential stakeholders who I'm sure in the ecosystem, who I'm sure will take heed of the report and make the changes that we need. I mean, I think you've sort of, the excellence of your report has made my job really easy. I think you've highlighted some of the core issues, which I have to say are long-standing issues. We've been researching this area for many years, and we did our recent Time to Change report, which reviewed the evidence base over 30 odd years, and some of the issues that you've highlighted resonate strongly with the existing evidence. You pointed out the lack of tailored support. Finance obviously is a key, and not only a lack of finance in terms of support, but also the support that does exist tends to be fragmented and short-term and ad hoc, a long-standing issue, and a really interesting point of contrast with mainland Europe. When we did our review of the evidence base across mainland European countries, a number of the good practice examples that we highlighted were in existence for 20 years, 10 years. They were quite common in a number of countries. When we looked at the UK, we found very few that had lasted over 2 or 3 years. So I think this is a recurring issue. And the other point I like about your report is you highlighted the contextual issues that affect an individual's capacity to succeed or succeed in small firms. So, for example, you highlighted the housing issues, the emotional issues, childcare, etc. Those sort of things are seen sometimes as secondary. Actually, they're instrumental, particularly for migrants, because they have to negotiate so many regulatory hurdles across a range of different policy domains. Moving on to some of the recommendations, again, you've highlighted important ones: the need for targeted support, childcare support, recognizing that not all migrants look the same, and they engage in entrepreneurship in different ways, and so the staged report is important. I was very pleased to see you, the research, draw attention to the need to have much more sensitive and calibrated metrics. And to be fair, both Joe and John made reference to this as well. I've been part of putting in bids, etc., and they talk about job creation. We all know that, you know, at best the research evidence per se, let alone on migrants, it is very fragile in most cases. So to insist upon a fragile metric for migrants, it seems counterproductive. But I welcome this sensitivity for the need of a wide range of issues. your point about the role of universities is important, and I would say this. I think there's a desperate need for anchor institutions. I mentioned the sort of fragile and short-term ad hoc nature of support. Well, universities have deep roots in particular locations. They are instrumental to what we a commonly agreed policy objective of place-based support. So I think that's important. Yeah, there's probably 2 or 3 areas that are sort of beyond the recommendations that exist in the report that are worth probably mentioning as well. We're in an area of digital, so digital inclusion is fundamental to any kind of business support issue. And I would link this very much to innovation. Certainly in my neck of the woods, in the West Midlands, Birmingham, a lot of business support now is rooted through the funding mechanism of innovation. We're one of the regions of the innovation accelerator. Increasingly, bodies like UKRI are supporting innovation-based initiatives. So if we, if it's the fact that business, a significant part of business support is rooted through innovation, I think we have to really ask how inclusive is that innovation, and to what extent does it incorporate the group that we're looking at today. A lot of people, a lot of policymakers and academics talk about inclusive innovation. I think they do. They're less forthcoming when you push them on what it actually means and who benefits from inclusive innovation. And I think this is worth considering. Again, appreciating the multidimensional nature of the challenges facing migrants in particular. Making the link between housing stability and participation in entrepreneurship is, I think, probably worth looking at as well, because these structural factors really impinge quite significantly on an individual's capacity to engage in entrepreneurship. I mentioned the point earlier about migrants are a very homogeneous group, differentiated by a number of different factors. Again, people have talked about the term super diversity. Closely related to that is intersectionality, and I think we need to see that probably reflected in policy and business support programs as well. In the report, you made reference to training and mentoring. That's very welcome. But I was particularly pleased to hear the mention about market opportunities, expanding access to market opportunities. I think that could be emphasized even more. And I think that the Combined Authority, the Growth Institute, the business support organizations have a big role to play in that. Not only because they are procurers themselves, but I think, as John mentioned, they have huge convening power, and they could send a strong signal down the supply chain to first-tier suppliers to ask them the question of how are they ensuring that their supply chains reflect the communities that they serve. So we've done a lot of work on supply chains in the past, and it is and in my view, a neglected policy lever. And I'd also mention the importance. The report mentions the importance of emotional support and confidence being very important, and that may well be a reflection of the sort of restricted networks that migrant entrepreneurs, particularly migrant women entrepreneurs, have. I think that needs to have a corollary reflected in business support as well. And so, for example, are mental health issues taken into account in business support as well? Do they need to be joined up? And I think this is all speaks to the issue that we've advocated in the past about business support being a holistic process, and that applies with particular force with migrants. And finally, because I'm a researcher, we all need better data collection and research, more research. I think this is important. A number of the colleagues have mentioned the lack of data. This again is a UK-wide issue, but if we're going to have evidence-based interventions, that it makes sense. Therefore, we need adequate data. And again, the combined authority could play a really important role on insisting that data is kept on these kinds of initiatives. Thanks, Deema.
Thank you very much, Monder. And if I may add that the report that was launched by the CREM Centre quite recently, Time for Change, was a source of inspiration to me and Eva when we started this project, not to mention as well the role that the CREM Centre has played as a centre of engaged scholarship, really setting a great example for other scholars. So many thanks for your contribution and your thoughtful words. And then Eva, on to you.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Right, so we now have Dr. Lorna Kriener with us, who, as Deema mentioned before, is Associate Professor in Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Nottingham University, and also acts as President of Institute for Small Business and Entrepreneurship. So welcome again, Lorna, thank you for joining us. And a question to you. You have a well-established record of researching and supporting women entrepreneurs. And you're, of course, well aware of the underrepresentation of women entrepreneurs in the UK. This is something you reflected on in the report. Based on your experience, what would be your top 3 points of action to support a more inclusive ecosystem that incorporates women entrepreneurs?
First off, thanks very much for the invite, Eva and Deema. And just to say that this really is a great example of good practice and of policymakers actively committing to inclusive growth. So I do think that the partnership and West Yorkshire Combined Authority and yourselves need to be commended for what you've been doing here. And secondly, I'd like to thank Monder. I always like it when I talk after Monder because usually he's quite comprehensive and then it saves me a bit of work. So I suppose in terms of women's entrepreneurship, you know, some of the stuff was covered in the report. And certainly one of Monder's recommendations in the report was appropriate business support offerings, you know, with that sort of awareness of cultural, I suppose, sensitivity and sort of that ethnic minority awareness. And I would say that it needs to have that gender awareness and gender lens as well. And I think, I suppose, the research shows that women don't typically, well, most women who enter into self-employment or who start a business don't do so with the goal of starting sort of a multinational firm or a high growth business. Often growth for women is more organic. And so it doesn't mean that if you have a woman coming along saying, I want to start, as one of your participants did, a bakery, it doesn't mean that she won't end up with a chain of bakeries, but that just may not be her original vision. So I think we need to take the cap in relation to aspiration away from women themselves and from those who are supporting them. And I think that that's part of the challenge, and that's informed by those stereotypes that I mentioned in the report. And it's great. And I think one of the important things that Anna mentioned earlier was that, you know, she was not fully confident. And that's the case for many women, especially if they've been away from the labour market for a long time due to caring responsibilities or whatever. But it's particularly relevant for, I suppose, new nationals who aren't perhaps, you know, as au fait with the institutional setup and the customs and practices in this country. And so it's really important that there is that element of hand-holding and support there to help them build the confidence. But one of the key things is the provision of affordable and flexible childcare that's available in places and also appropriately at times that it's needed, because not every business can or will operate on a 9-to-5 basis. And I think while it's really good to see appropriate and informed support like this, I think for too long what we have seen is policymakers adopting a sort of let's fix the women approach. You know, let's get more women to start businesses. Let's get more women to go into science and start businesses in traditionally male industries. With the expectation that if you create a big enough number of them over time, all those issues will sort of related to gender will work themselves out. That hasn't happened in the workplace, in the labour market, since women joined en masse in the early 20th century. So it really, we do need to start sort of trying to address the structural barriers, and childcare is one, but it's also perhaps time to get the investment community to do their homework, rather than teaching women how to pitch according to sort of a male template. We need to be asking venture capitalists, angel investors, the investment community to do their homework, and we need to be getting the data from them so that we as a wider sort of ecosystem are more informed and can use that information and data, because it's not enough just to keep focusing on the women and putting the onus on the women. We have to really start trying to tackle those structural issues. So that's my thoughts for today.
Brilliant. And okay, thank you so much, Lorna. It's really good to hear your insights, particularly around, you know, I'm very passionate about this notion that we don't need to fix women or treat them as proxy for men. We just need to understand them more closely and realize their structural constraints and specificities as well.
Yes, we do. And we need more male allies who will call out sort of bad behavior or poorly informed decisions.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so next we have Fred Kastner. Fred, can you hear me? Fred?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Hello,
Yeah,
Fred. Thank you, Fred. Thank you for joining us. Fred is the co-founder of the Entrepreneurial Refugee Network, that's TERN. And Fred has been an invaluable collaborator. TERN has been an invaluable collaborator on this project on migrant women entrepreneurs. So you've had, again, a lot of experience integrating refugees into the society through entrepreneurship, and your collaboration with Migration Yorkshire aligns with your future plans at TERN. So building on your long experience as a practitioner who has helped refugee entrepreneurs, what approaches or models could be explored at the regional and local level to promote more inclusive entrepreneurship?
Thank you, Deema. Thank you, Ewa, and everyone who's gone before. I know some of you, and I'm so glad to come after you. That's always, again, an honor. It's been an honor to work with you on the project. I do have a few slides. I hope you can see my screen. You've kind of already done the general introduction of TERN, Deema, which is helpful. It's been a pleasure working with you and supporting capacity in the project, and we have high hopes to continue collaborating beyond the report and in evolving what the project is doing to influence and collaborating around that. At TERN, we have a general mission to enable refugees to thrive through the power of their own ideas, but then we also have women-specific objectives, and we think that the collaboration with you could be essential in achieving that amongst other partners. There are around 44% of our applicants who are women, and so that alone is, roughly in line actually with I think the percentage of women amongst refugees in the UK. And so at least women have at least the same entrepreneurialism rate, if not more. If you were to do deep research like you all suggest, then you might find that actually maybe it's higher. I do want to highlight a set of numbers that, please, dear researchers, don't punish me for it, but these are self-calculated, but I can one day show you how we got to these numbers. But we believe there are, and believe based on our calculations and official data available to us, that there's at least 7,500 entrepreneurial women with refugee backgrounds in the UK, and that they could definitely create around 5,000 self-employments or businesses if they were well supported systematically. None of us can do that alone, and that they could create at least 16,000 jobs, of which I'm sure some would go to women and some would go to others, and many would go to refugees. So that alone feels like there's work to do here, and none of us can do that alone. At TERN, we also have to be modest in terms of the numbers we can support. The project contributes to this too. We have 250 active women members in our network, all refugee entrepreneurs, and they have started already around 100 businesses, which have created around 90 jobs. And we have run several fairs and events and different services for women entrepreneurs, and we know that they have at the very least generated around 500,000 in total revenue, but that's hopefully ever growing. We offer her TERN as a specialized wraparound service for women. So there's her advice, her voice, and her opportunity. Maybe we can tell you a bit more about these service lines another time, but it's all about women-led services that are offered on top of our normal service interventions, which are inclusive of women, of course. We also have a specific collaboration with Visa called Visa Pioneers, where awards are given to women refugee entrepreneurs. So just to explain a few things we do with women, for women, among the community. I do have a few specific recommendations. TERN has a approach called Powered by TERN, which some of you know about, which leads us to working with local partners across the UK and, in fact, internationally. We have open source content, tools, and methods, and where needed and desired, we also train our partners rather than just passing these contents on. We believe that there is a need for both local provision and national network provision of support to refugees and refugee women specifically. And in terms of how we worked with the team, we would like to expand that if possible. We supported where it was needed and where we could add value, but going forward, we hope to help the team here at Migration Yorkshire and in the project more widely to expand this type of work. I hope that they get the right support for it, and we'd be right there by their side. A lot of actors in the call, I think, are also potential partners. In terms of specific recommendations, no matter if it's just us working on it or ideally more sector actors as a type of alliance to support women refugee entrepreneurs. I appreciate we're also talking about migrant women today, but here, because of TERN's remit, I have focused this on refugee women, but I think a lot of this also would intersectionally apply. I think there was a scheme in the past where people could get childcare vouchers as entrepreneurs. It was discontinued a long time ago, but I think it was actually a very interesting and relevant intervention. And if there was subsidies, perhaps income level bound, it would help a lot of people with multiple responsibilities to actually be able to dedicate time to the business. I think, of course, we need investment into women-led, refugee and migrant entrepreneur-led service lines, but also into microfinance. I know my colleague Isabel should tell us more about that later. And we also think that it isn't just about us, actually, and bespoke service provision. We think that we should talk to mainstream actors and existing broader diversity and inclusion actors who have room for, and maybe sometimes even women-specific interventions to make their services more accessible and to facilitate access of the women we support into their network. So I'm sure some of you have that same objective or represent that type of actor. It's great to hear that some of you want to talk about marketplace-based, opportunities-based support for women. I think they don't have the opportunity to take speculative risks on business because they have less time and they have often less financial resource, as we know, and a lot of other responsibilities. So maybe the stakes are even higher. And so if business support can be tied to actual business opportunities rather than just, and it's not meant to diminish it, entrepreneurship education service provision, but really tied to existing business opportunities, ideally locally, but also nationwide opportunities with marketplace actors and investors/funders, then that would be great. I think we can't just do it with bespoke solutions. We have to influence existing service and product providers to make their solutions more accessible in a systematic way. And I think that the last bit, power shift to refugee women, or say refugee and migrant women, would be essential because they should be involved in this process and should be ultimately embedded in and embed themselves in those kind of conversations and also in decision-making structures to represent and influence. So those will be my recommendations. I hope we get to work on some of this both on a national and local level. And I'm happy to hear from more presenters. Thank you for having us for the first project. Well done, and looking forward to some more.
Thank you so much, Fred. As always, I love hearing from TERN. There's always something new, something exciting happening. And whenever I'm on a call, it's like, oh, there's this other thing that's happening, or like, we can tell you a bit more about that project. So definitely a catch-up call due soon to speak a little bit more. And yes, I have a great pleasure now to introduce Isabel Ford, who's a founder and director at Skylight Ventures. Isabel, can I just check if you are?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Hi.
Great.
I'll just spotlight you for
Hi.
everyone so I'm noticing you. So thank you so much for joining and for being a partner. It's been wonderful working together. And the question I have for you is, you help many refugee entrepreneurs secure zero interest funding to support their business startups. Can you tell us why you have chosen to partner with Migration Yorkshire on this project, and also reflect a bit on the main challenges facing businesses in relation to financing for refugee entrepreneurs, and what could be done to address those?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks so much for including us in this project. So my name's Isabel. I work very closely with Fred and Charlie at TERN. So part of my day job is also there as head of community ventures. But as part of that role, I've set up Skylight as a separate company because we've for a long time now recognized the need for access to finance amongst the refugee community specifically. The migrant background question is another interesting thing that I might touch on at the end if we have time, because we're looking at sort of expanding into that potentially in the future. But for now, Skylight focuses on financing for refugee entrepreneurs, which is community-led by refugee entrepreneurs themselves. So despite what Fred has referred to in terms of interest in self-employment amongst refugee entrepreneurs being very high and close to double that of the UK average, we see a really high number of the community I've worked with failing to access any funding for their business. I ran a survey in 2022 that showed that while over 80% of the entrepreneurs in the TERN's community stated finance was essential for their business to grow, 2/3 of them were unaware of any suitable options, and 2/3 had never even tried to apply for a loan because they didn't think that they were able to. So that's where Skylight grew from. We essentially provide access to credit up to £2,500 completely interest-free. Through 3 different loan products, including refinancing. We also growing into providing access to financial learning and literacy, and working on systems change and advocacy partnerships with more mainstream and other ethical financial providers, which I'll come on to in a second when we talk about recommendations. The main challenges we're trying to address, which were reflected across this cohort that we got to work with, were a lack of access to informal funding that many native entrepreneurs in the UK might more easily be able to use, such as your own savings, informal loans from friends and family, or accessing a fairly low risk business loan from a bank. Many of this community struggle to do that for a lot of the reasons we've touched on this call, including, a lack of a personal and professional network that's developed here, and also specifically for funding, lack of a credit score, lack of, long-term address information, and lots of other eligibility criteria which really discriminate against refugees when accessing not just business but also personal financial services here. So we were set up to tackle that by providing a really accessible, quick and community-led solution, so people can access funding from us as quickly as 2 to 3 weeks. The first round of decision making on all of our loans is run by a panel of refugee entrepreneurs who we train and recruit. Most of them have worked with TERN before, quite a few of them have been Skylight borrowers before, so they bring their lived experience to bear on that first round of application scoring. And we've also tried to make everything as easy as possible, considering that somebody might be fairly newly arrived here, not necessarily be comfortable with all the technical language involved in the UK financial system, and also may have at some times slightly lower English or tech literacy levels. So our application is all done online with a lot of touch points with the Skylight team. We make sure every applicant's triangulated with a business coach, either via TERN or via programs like Migration Yorkshire. And we make sure that applicants can submit information in the way that works for them. So we accept video submissions, voice notes, written text, and it's all very hands-on. So at the moment, interestingly, when we first came in touch with Deema and the others on the project, we actually were already lending more to women. And at the moment, 64% of the loans we've made so far have gone to female refugee entrepreneurs. So there's definitely a lot of interest there in terms of how we can further tailor and target our services to ensure that they are really provided for in what is already a very niche and overlooked customer pool in the sort of wider financial landscape in the UK. So we were really excited to work with this cohort. What made it work really well for Skylight was that it was a small, fairly close-knit group of entrepreneurs working together, and that they also had such excellent wraparound support. That's something we've seen that's really, really key from our side. When we bring on new potential borrowers, if we want to maintain high repayment rates, we see a direct correlation with how engaged their support or caseworker is with their business support, which is why we've now decided to make sure that everyone who gets a loan has access to a business coach via our own in-house coaching or through TERN, because we saw how that worked really well with the borrowers from the Migration Yorkshire programme. So now we've as an organisation lent just over 80k to 79 entrepreneurs, of whom 3 came from this programme. They have 3 really different, really interesting businesses. They're actually featured in our impact report, which is coming out next month. And I can share more about that perhaps in the chat after this. In terms of next steps for where we see the best route for addressing these ongoing challenges, we're obviously providing a product, a very specific product, which is targeted to meet this issue for refugee entrepreneurs. But what we're really looking to work on in the next year or so is wider change across the financial inclusion space in the UK. So we're increasingly working with some challenger banks, other more inclusive finance providers such as CDFIs and credit unions, and entrepreneurship organisations like TERN, to see if there's something we can build together which creates momentum behind this idea that access to finance is one of the biggest barriers faced by refugee and migrant entrepreneurs, and there are products we can create ourselves and tailor from elsewhere to start addressing that need, but that those products need to be tailored properly and led by that community themselves, because there is still such a huge gap to bridge between really mainstream business financing and where we're at now with this fairly successful but fairly small model that we've created. So yeah, our mission over the next year is really to bring those learnings to providers that we want to partner with, to make sure that all the entrepreneurs we work with also have access to those follow-on funding opportunities, because it's really as simple as that. Businesses need funding. It's fantastic to get sort of other more holistic support around them, but I've seen so many business growth stories unlocked over the last couple of years with just a small amount of capital. So yeah, we're really passionate about continuing to provide that, but we're really looking to network with anybody who's interested in bringing that to other financial providers as well in the UK.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Isabel. Again, great insights, and it's wonderful to see how Skylight spotted that gap in the market around financing for refugees, and the community-led solution, also led by refugees through refugees, is something that we lack on other programs. Stressing mentorship, which is something that we highlighted in our project as well through Jane Walton, who did a brilliant job with the mentorship program with the women on our program. So thank you very much for sharing these insights. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Andrew Mycock. Andy, are you with us?
I am indeed. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much for joining us, Andy. I know you're running a very, very busy schedule these days, but Andy is Chief Policy Fellow of the Yorkshire and Humber Policy Engagement and Research Network, YPERN, at the University of Leeds. He's been a great source of support to me and Eva, particularly over the last few months. So my question to you, Andrew, based on the insights you've heard from policy, practice and academia, and in your capacity as Chief Policy Fellow at YPERN, what would be your reflections on the role of universities in promoting more inclusive ecosystems generally, and migrant entrepreneurship more specifically, and how could this role be promoted?
I'm going to first apologise. I'm in the foyer at Doncaster Theatre, and I'm just looking forward to someone walking past with a trolley. It's extraordinarily loud, so this could be a little bit noisy for the next 5 seconds.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Congratulations for getting the report done. I'm not going to take up too much time because I've been listening into the conversation, and there's that many experts on this call that have wisely both embraced the findings of the report and also seen different pathways to its value. I think there are two things I'd like to focus on. One is that this is a piece of research which adopts what we call a quadruple helix. You've brought together policymakers, academia, community, business groups, the public sector. So it's a remarkably authoritative piece of work. I think its value for universities is that universities need to think about not only the role of migrant female entrepreneurs in terms of the delivery of the programs that they teach at an undergraduate and postgraduate level, but also they need to be thinking about how they can connect with stakeholders outside of universities in terms of supporting graduates as they go out into the wider world, and particularly making sure that they adopt some of the wise recommendations outlined in the report in terms of making sure that there is transitional support so that those that are coming maybe from communities that don't have the same levels of social capital, social infrastructure, and also business development, or that maybe simply that they find themselves isolated in those communities, that those female migrant entrepreneurs are given provision of support by universities, not only individually, but the fact that universities are significant civic players and they have huge connections across the policy and business and community landscape. And they can use that power to ensure that there's networks of support that provide a better transition out of studies. I think beyond that, I think universities can help in terms of the way in which they can connect in promoting this kind of report, and this research has really practical applied suggestions linked to it. YPERN is a network of 12 universities and all the local and combined authorities of Yorkshire and Humber. And we can take this report and research like this, and we can put it on the doorstep of policymakers across the region. And I think it's important to think about those practical policy recommendations in this report and think about how we, as a community of practitioners coming from different backgrounds, can develop that sense of collective voice around the wisdom in those recommendations. And one of the things that YPERN is going to be doing going forward is to use this report to transfer its learnings from West Yorkshire to South, North, and East Yorkshire and Hull as the combined authorities comes on stream. We can also help in terms of using the report in terms of feeding into national government inquiries. And I'm thinking at the moment there is a parliamentary inquiry on female entrepreneurship. And the approach of this report means that it has a significant effect in terms of shifting away from the idea that the challenges of female entrepreneurship are generic and shaped purely by gender alone. And we know that different diversity of context, of spatial location, and different ways in which women from migrant backgrounds are challenged in terms of their development of their entrepreneurship, well, they're very much aligned to the idea that this needs to be something which is not a one-size-fits-all approach towards developing support. I think finally, YPERN is very keen to work with universities to think about how we can support the next phase of this research. And it's quite clear that this research has provided some very powerful insights in terms of the state of play in West Yorkshire. Well, we think that there is potential to grow this research and think about it not only across Yorkshire and Humber more widely, but also on a national scale. And so I think one of the things that all those involved in this research and those of you that have supported and been involved in it is that you should be thinking about how this research can be grown so that it develops a more comprehensive national approach towards supporting migrant female entrepreneurs. Deema, that's it for me for the moment. It seems to be that the various catering trolleys have passed, so I'll pass back to you.
No, it's great to hear the insights, Andrew, and it's great to hear that the universities will be stepping up to support projects like this. So we have this recorded, Nandi. Thank you so much, Eva.
Thank you so much. We're bang on time. I just wanted to bring everything together now and just say a massive thank you to all the speakers, all the contributors again. And I love in the chat already, I've seen some people reaching out and sharing contact details. I think that is what the strength lies of this kind of project. You know, as somebody mentioned, this is not just working in one area. This is a kind of, you know, at the national level, similar issues that we are facing. And I think only just by coming together, collaborating, sharing experience and knowledge, you can push this forward. And I think just to lastly, before we let you all go, share the next steps. Because we want to keep the momentum going, and we very much kind of see this as a starting point. It's not just kind of we produce this report and that's that. So I think as Joe and Fatima mentioned, you know, we will be feeding into the future design of Enterprise West Yorkshire. There will be a roundtable discussion between the WICAS policy team and migrant women entrepreneurs. So we're really looking forward to that. We're also very keen to support West Yorkshire local growth plan, especially the priority 2, the enabling all businesses to succeed, and playing a role in the future design as well. As Andy mentioned, we're looking at replication and scaling of the framework beyond West Yorkshire, and you know, having John with us today from East Yorkshire and Hull, but also having those links with South Yorkshire, North Yorkshire already. It's just very much watch the space, and some of the conversations are already happening in the background. Exploring funding streams, as everyone knows, we always need a little bit more funding. So that's something that we obviously will be focusing to keep the project going and scaling up. And as Andy mentioned as well, we will be targeting this parliamentary call for evidence by the Women and Equalities Committee on Female Entrepreneurship. So hopefully that will keep us busy over the coming months. As mentioned, the Deema already posted a link to the report. We'll reshare it. We will circulate the slides, the recording, the link to the report with everybody, so you have access. But please do get in touch. We're always so keen just to learn from, you know, what you might be doing in your part of the local regional level, and if you want to learn a little bit more, if you want any more details about the project, we're very happy to share that with you. But yeah, from me, thank you so much. It's been fantastic, and I've learned a lot again from so many contributors, so thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you for the wonderful encouragement about the report. It's been the outcome of the input from so many stakeholders. We couldn't have done it without you. And I don't know why my emojis are disabled, but I have hearts and happy faces on all of your comments. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll keep you posted about future updates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.